What crazy-ass story do you need to tell? Years ago I was hitchhiking north of Richmond, Virginia when a car with two dudes picked me up. We got to chatting and it turns out they were headed to their friend's place to shoot guns and asked me if I wanted to join. I asked if his friend would be okay with a random homeless-esque fellow shooting his guns and he said hell, just pretend to be my cousin from Seattle. So instead of sitting on the highway in 100-degree weather I spent an afternoon eating hamburgers, shooting guns, and blowing shit up with bags of tannerite on some random DoD employee's woodland property. Don't remember your name, dude, but you were the man. Thanks for a great memory. Why does your cousin look homeless? He's from Seattle, makes sense. Story checks out. Source, am from Seattle. When I was learning to fly at a sketchy flight school, I was doing a pre-flight check flight, close to the end of the program. I was doing the run-up in a Cessna, when I smelt something. Do you smell that? Smells like gas, I say. Instructor 21 Yo shrugs. Annoyed, I open the door, and there is a spreading puddle of off-gas under the plane. Shit. The instructor panics, stay in the plane, I'll get help. And runs off. As soon as I got the engine off, I noped out of there, and watched the plane dump all its fuel on the runway. They kindly gave me another plane, an instructor. They fixed their plane, and a month later, I read about the same plane crashing, due to fuel issues, 1 fatality. No significant repercussions for company. Did you report it? I feel like your story would be condemning evidence in an inquiry into the fatality. Yeah, this is a good example of just one person speaking up making a whole case because it is proof of some element of notice of problem or something. A little while back my roommate was contacted by a wealthy man in the area who wanted to pay her to be his live-in pet for an entire month. She thought that this was a cutesy way of saying that it was a sugar daddy baby arrangement. Turns out what he actually meant was that she would be given room, board and a very healthy allowance to spend a large portion of her day dressed as a cat, walking on her hands and knees, eating out of a bowl, using a litter box and, yes, sleeping in a little cage at night. Sex wasn't even on the table. He was only interested in having a human cat for a month. She seriously considered the offer for a weekend, and then politely declined. Edit, this allowance would have covered her college tuition for the semester. He knew what he wanted and was very motivated. My dad went to secondary school with John Lennon and was a couple years older than him. Dad was known for playing the drums and being quite musical, and one day John asks him whether he'd like to be the drummer in a band he's forming. Dad was keen, but my granny said he needed to prioritize studying and so he didn't join. The band formed and were called the Quarrymen, and I think a guy called Colin was the drummer instead of Dad, who I believe was later replaced by Pete Best and then Ringo as they changed to the Silver Beatles, and then the Beatles. I like to imagine that in an alternative universe my dad said yes and that was history. I don't even mind that I wouldn't have been born if this had been the outcome, he really deserved to have had that lifetime. #X200B, edit, well this got a lot more attention than I ever could have expected, I only joined Reddit a little while ago. Thank you to the 4 kind strangers who gave me a silver medal, I feel very honored. It's blowing my little mind that over 20k people have read this. It's been awesome to hear everyone else's near misses chances of fate, and cheers for the many lovely comments about my story. Have a great day, chaps X. I can't even ducking imagine what it might be like to have almost been a Beatle. I mean, it may not have worked out, maybe they move on to Ringo regardless, but still, what if? Damn. Imagine that. John, Paul, George and that guy's dad. Legendary. I also choose that guy's dad. Don't know how interesting it is. But a few years ago I'd go to college in the morning and leave at like midnight because I didn't have a PC and needed to work on homework at school. One time on the last train ride home, I had to catch 2 trains and 2 buses each way to get there and back. We were coming into the last station where I'd get off. There was this Asian guy acting a bit strange the whole ride. He gets up and stands in the middle of the car, and as the train brakes coming into the station he falls flat on his face from a full standing position, lays there until the train stops, stands up, dusts himself off and walks out of the open doors like nothing happened. I saw this guy doing it like 5 other separate times, and since I was used to it at that point I enjoyed looking out for the uninitiated riders' reactions. Plenty more slightly weird stuff happened on my late night subway rides home. I really enjoyed the entertainment. I didn't believe in aliens either till the other day when I saw a huge guy in jogging gear running full pace without swinging his arms. They were just stiff by his sides. It was the weirdest alien thing I have ever seen, like an alien mimicking our movements. There was this one weird kid in high school who did this. You guys brought back some memories. There was a family that bought a house on my street and the older son ran like this. I became best friends with the daughter for a few years and the whole family was so weird. The brother also used to listen to Klingon tapes, to learn the language, and would chew his sister out in Klingon when she'd pissed him off. I went to middle school with a kid with a short temper. Whenever he'd get pissed about anything, he'd start yelling in Klingon. It made social studies really interesting. I went to middle school with a kid that had a rolling backpack, would run stiff-armed, and would tell you silence mortal instead of shut up and yell Haza when he agreed edit. It's spelled Huzzah happy now? I stole my own car back once. I used to restore classic cars. I had the most valuable one I've ever had at a body shop, and he took forever to finish it. He had painted other cars for me, but apparently developed a drug problem. I would check on the car every week to see if there was any progress. Finally, after a year he told me he painted 90% of it, but Hess asking for more money than we originally agreed. I drive there on a Friday afternoon unannounced, and see my car outside the shop, worth a ton of money, with the shop owner nowhere in sight. His neighbor told me he had left the car outside for 3 days and several people have tried to steal it. So I call a tow truck and tow it to my garage right away. On my home the shop owner calls me over and over again. He thought somebody stole the car. He kept calling me for months. I never responded. I've had customers steal cars that my father and I restored. Had one guy go to test drive a '38 Ford delivery that we did for him. Never saw him or the car ever again. Had another guy attempt to steal a Corvette C3 that we swapped an LS7 into. Only way we caught him was that it blew a radiator hose on the interstate about 20 miles away on a test drive. And these people were supposedly respectable, and had the money to pay us. They obviously didn't. I'm a pretty avid cyclist, which means whenever I have the time, I will ride my bike away from the city I live in, into the mountainous suburbs to challenge myself up some of the local climbs. It was another one of these excursions. I had just rode up and down a big-ass mountain, on the road headed back to the city center. I was fairly tired, still had 40 km to get back home. All of a sudden, I see traffic on the opposite lane stopped for some reason. What I immediately saw next I was not prepared for. I saw an ostrich on my lane, in front of me, running after the car ahead. WTF, it's not like the country I live in is habitat to any ostriches. Slowly, I follow the ostrich, which is running after the car ahead, faced with a decision: do I overtake the ostrich? Now I'm no expert on ostriches, but I do remember reading that ostriches run really quickly, and that they can be aggressive towards humans. I don't want to become the victim of an ostrich attack, but I do want to get home quickly, as it was starting to get dark. After hesitating for a while, I gave it all I had and overtook the ostrich. The rest isn't that interesting. I managed to get home unharmed. But to this day, it remains one of my most surreal experiences, running into an ostrich on a bike ride. Edit, blimey, this is my most upvoted comment by far. Hope you all had a good laugh like I did. I used to open letters for a state-run bureau. We had a dedicated unit of people just opening letters all day long by the ton. For some reason, a person not in the right mind started to send letters with human feces in them, perhaps as a form of retaliation, I do not know. This went on for weeks, if not months. Certain units had to use disposable gloves and face masks in case of number 2 letters. For my inconvenience I was one who had the honors to open one of this perpetrator's mail. This time it was different. Along with the poo, something rolled out of the envelope. Something shiny. With the aid of some hand disinfectant and paper towels, I cleaned this tiny, round and golden piece of metal. This poop person sent a gold coin from the 17th-19th century along with his excrement. The coin is small, around 2 grams, but it appears to be solid gold. I doubt that the person who lost this item is willing to get it back, since sending human feces to a bureau is considered a crime. The coin itself is not worth that much, but this is by far the most ridiculous story I have to tell from my previous mind-numbing job as a bureaucrat. And this, kids, is how I got myself a gold coin from a letter full of shit. Edit, did some editing. Obligatory tiftics. Someone's shit is others' gold. Poopatrator.